Good morning, everybody. We'll get started in just another minute. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to Low-Hanging Fruit, Marketing Tactics for 2021. I'm Mike Kuharske. We also have Izetta Reese manning our chat dialog box, so at any point during the presentation, feel free to use that functionality to ask a question, and we will have some Q&A time towards the end of the presentation. So the goal for me today, it's probably an understatement to say that we're all looking forward to 2020 coming to a close. And as we have our eye on 2021, I really want to share a little bit of who we are and why there's three particular tactics that we tend to fall back on time and again with our business-to-business customers. We'll kind of be a little bit heavy on the why, but also hopefully leave you with some tips and tricks about the how to execute some of these tactics for your organization, should they be right. For those of you old enough to remember the Domino's 30-minute or free guarantee, this won't be my only pizza reference during the presentation. So first things first, kind of who we are. Basically, in a nutshell, I'm a lifelong business development and sales guy that started a marketing firm because I felt for small and medium-sized organizations, typical marketing and advertising type folks didn't really understand how the B2B sales process happens successfully. And really the spirit of our approach is that in the marketing world in B2B, we're really emulating one-to-many what successful salespeople do one-to-one in these organizations. We really consider ourselves expert generalists. We use a lot of different tactics, and we're really independent in that ultimately, with not having contracts with our customers, we've got to be producing results. So really the only tactics that we prefer are the ones that are going to drive the successful revenue goals of our customers. So if I say the three most important things in real estate are, everybody's probably answering in their mind, location, location, location. Well, in marketing, we really have one rule, and that's audience, audience, audience. Ultimately, for every organization, the key to successful sales is really a perception shift between us internally talking about, hey, we have a sales process, we're going to walk these customers through these steps to the sale. In reality, the buyer has to feel in control. This tool, and everybody will receive a PDF version, and we also are recording this webinar so that you can come back to it. This tool we use time and again with all of our clients because it really helps us understand these are the steps any one individual prospect has to be taken through, from blissfully oblivious that they even have a problem that our product or service could solve for them, through to being a raving, fan of our organization and our product or service. How this is really useful is to understand the mindset for any type of marketing communication. It's really, if you're trying to wake customers up and they don't understand they have a problem, anything about the organization really isn't important. You have to help them understand they have a problem and that problem is important enough to do something about before they're really interested in whether you're a viable solution to that problem. So keeping in mind, it's all about the audience. That's ultimately what makes these the right tactics to potentially use in your organization, and it's the key to understanding how to execute those tactics successfully. I'm not going to go into great detail, but these 5 philosophies are kind of the underpinning of the marketing plan for every one of our customers. And it really hinges on again, in that theme of it's the audience that matters, your existing customers hold the key to how do you find more customers more prospects that will value your product or service just like your current customers do. We have a saying that, all of people are wired, to find their like kinds, congregate and communicate, right? We're social creatures, and understanding the commonalities that your customers have points you in the right direction to where other prospects will exist. So let's get into the 3 tactics that we're going to cover today and kind of the big picture why. So these are listed actually in ROI priority, I would call it, right? The fastest path to revenue. Email prospecting, followed by search engine advertising, followed by affinity group advertising. And what these really are is they're transposed against the sales funnel. So email prospecting being the biggest priority, followed by search engine advertising, affinity group advertising, really has to do with how well qualified and how much we know, and the fact that in email prospecting, we know exactly who they are. We have their email address. They might even know who we are because maybe they're our existing customers and we're trying to cross-sell something or upsell them. But either way, we've got that means to reach directly out to them and communicate with them. Second priority would be search engine advertising. So we don't necessarily know who they are, but we know they have an interest in what we have to offer, because we can tell Google, hey, only show me people who are searching for pizza, and that's when my pizza restaurant wants to show up and be an option to solve their hunger for pizza. Told you I was going to get more pizza references in here. Third is affinity group advertising. So this is, all right, we don't know exactly who they are, but we know the characteristics of who our customer is and who should value our product or service. And we leverage an affinity group, whether it's an industry publication or a trade association or some kind of interest organization. We leverage their credibility to reach precisely the audience we want and wake them up to the problem that they have and the solution that we offer. So the first tactic, email prospecting. So it's probably important to kind of define what this is. What do we really mean? What this isn't is the well-polished graphic HTML, email advertisement or e-blast or newsletter. It's really, all right, we as a marketing team want to emulate the same one-to-one communication that our sales team would execute on an individual prospect, just do it in higher volumes and in a more systematic way. It's important to say that the goal of this, so these are text-based emails, right? This is the marketing team pretending basically to be a salesperson and reaching out to wake a target prospect up to a particular problem or initiate any kind of, the ultimate goal is some kind of response. The ideal is, hey, tell me more, I'm interested, I want a demo or I want a sales consultation or what have you. But in the prospecting world, any response is good, even if it's, hey, I'm not ready at this time, right? That gives us the ability to hand this to a salesperson who can then maybe further tailor that message to help them amplify that pain and say, oh, it really is a good time for you to tackle this particular issue in your organization or what have you. The tools you need to execute this, so email prospecting, this is really a fancy version of a mail merge, right? You most likely have the tools. If you've got any of the modern cloud-based CRM systems, they have this capability, or if you have an existing email tool like Zoho or MailChimp or HubSpot, the functionality exists. So it's really about leveraging that tool combined with having a list of email addresses and ideally a little bit more information so you can get personal with things, including their name, maybe their title, the industry the organization is engaged in, what have you. And then the thing that trips most organizations up is compiling that list of subject lines and body copy, and we'll get into that in a second. Overall, this is a really cost-effective tactic to deploy. acquiring, even if you don't have, a healthy database of, hey, these are the 10,000 suspects and prospects that we think should be buying from us over the next however long period of time. Acquiring those emails can be had for as little as $1 each in more of like a list acquisition. There's also a variety of tools out there that can help you in more of a manual prospecting and scraping up of target email addresses for particular organizations that are a fit with who you're after. The main approaches to email prospecting kind of fall into two batches, right? There's more of the, hey, we're leveraging, our existing customers, and maybe we're going deeper in the organization or just trying to wake them up to a different product or service offering that they're not currently purchasing from us. And then there's more of the cold email prospecting where, all right, we kind of think these people look like who we should be doing business with. We've got to wake them up to the problem first and foremost versus necessarily our product or service. The biggest challenges in email prospecting, time and again, the biggest obstacle usually is a failure to launch. Most organizations, hey, we know we should be frequently touching base with our entire database of suspects and prospects, but the execution ends up being the tripping point. And as far as effectiveness, this template checklist, use this to kind of ask yourself, if you're developing a template, the key to a template is it can't seem like a template. If these seem like automated emails, they don't drive the response we want with those individual prospects. So they have to feel friendly, they have to be simple, they have to be personalized, they have to really emulate, I handcrafted this email directly to you, Mr. Prospect or Miss Prospect. They really need to be no more than a few sentences, and back to audience, it's about the WIFM, what's in it for me, but that's in the customer's perspective, from the customer's perspective. Does it resonate? Does it trigger the recipient? Is there some kind of connection that especially shows a little bit deeper thought or value proposition? It's always going to be more effective if you can say to a customer, that, hey, based on your issue, this issue that I know you have, right, we can help you achieve this or that. And really focus on making it an easy, logical next step, providing, the natural response through a question. Hey, does it make more sense for me to follow up with you by phone, or could I email you some more information, right? Giving them an either or that encourages them to say, oh no, email's fine, right? Versus calling me on the phone. So the other kind of tip in email prospecting, and then we'll kind of move on to the next one, is manual accumulation of prospect emails will typically outperform purchase lists. By the time a list aggregator has gotten a hold of somebody's email address, they're probably on hundreds and hundreds of list sellers' lists. Much more effective is to go through and specifically identify organizations based on who your ideal client profile is, taking demographics of your current customers and maybe buying the list of company names and addresses, but then turning it over to either an internal team to find the correct people via tools like LinkedIn and those types of things, and actually come up with the email address to do your email prospecting. The second tactic, second most important or shortest path to revenue, is search engine advertising. So what is search engine advertising? Well, really there's only one game in town that you really need to pay attention to at this point: Google AdWords. Google has 93% of the market share. So what search engine advertising really is it's today's Yellow Pages. If I was hungry for pizza in the past, I flipped to the pizza section of the Yellow Pages, and we paid the Yellow Pages to put our restaurant front and center to capture the percentage of that market that was actively searching for our product or service. So the reason why this is really second in terms of shortest path to revenue is, if you're in an industry, even if you know a statistic like, hey, in our industry, 20% of companies, change their provider of X, Y, or Z every year. Okay, so there's an established market. People are going to the internet to research options or to explore, solutions to problems they're having. So once you dive into that, really the key is to understand, okay, how would our customers, our prospects, either search directly for our product or service, or if it's something a little bit more complex, and a lot of times in the B2B world, right, we have to educate customers, so they're most likely searching on solutions to a problem, not necessarily your exact product or service that can solve that. So it's really about getting inside of their mind and figuring out, all right, how do they ask, how do they fill out that dialog box on Google's webpage, or how do they type it into their navigation bar in their internet browser. And one of the key kind of evolutions is actually that more and more people are leveraging Google's search capabilities by asking it a question rather than just listing keywords. Some of the key considerations here, budget-wise, this is really easy to get started with. Google makes it very simple, just visiting google.com/AdWords. You can set up an account instantly. They've got keyword planning tools that let you actually explore how are people searching right before you actually spend any money. It's really easy to get started with a small budget and get your feet wet. Because this is an auction and a daily budget, you also don't want to set it and forget it. So the tools that Google employs or gives you access to, you can check this multiple times a week as it's generating clicks through to your website, and this is instantaneous, right? If you don't have a strong organic presence on your website for a particular capability, you can buy traffic around people that are searching and get those people to your website. But at the same time, you need to leverage the tools inside of Google to constantly refine, okay, by both positive and negative reinforcement, this keyword that Google says they're presenting isn't a good fit. Let's turn that off. So there is some nuance to getting the most out of the spend using search engine advertising. Third shortest path to revenue would be affinity group advertising. So this one plays in especially to organizations that maybe haven't already developed a sizable database of prospects and suspects. So if you don't have the audience, then you have to rent somebody else's audience. And when it comes to the world of advertising opportunities for B2B organizations, we tend to find that these affinity groups, these trade organizations or industry publications or professional groups, they have the tightest relationship and a very well-defined audience. So and there literally is a group for everything out there. If you're selling for some reason to stamp collecting doctors, there is going to be a group for stamp collecting doctors out there. So some of the examples of these organizations, the biggest tip here is when you're researching these organizations, you really are trying to get a handle on how respected are they, how strong is the relationship between them and their members or their subscribers or what have you, because really you're leveraging that relationship, right? You're bringing your opportunity is to get in front of exactly the audience you want and build awareness and generate some leads through effective calls to action and advertising, but that's only going to be as successful as their open rates on average for their e-blasts. So if their members don't ever open their e-blasts, well, they're not a great advertising vehicle for us as a potential advertiser. Some of the really cool examples and undervalued examples and tend to be the best bang for the buck is not necessarily the print publications, but almost all of these organizations do some type of either weekly or monthly e-blasts or e-newsletters that have sizable followings. Some of the other really good opportunities we've had success with is sponsored webinars. So an organization that specifically works with engineers in aerospace, right? We can go to them and they will promote us as a sponsored webinar and can create a very immediate impact in terms of list of webinar attendees and availability for the sales team to then follow up with them. So the key thing here is to research relevant organizations and think not only about just the top level, hey, our companies are in XYZ industry, so that industry matters, but what about the particular decision makers you reach? So are you talking with specifically engineers inside of these organizations? Well, then one of the many engineering discipline related professional certification groups or organizations might be relevant. And again, really evaluate the strength of that group when you're determining whether to potentially put budget to it. This is a little bit more of the expensive side of things but still, most of us are selling, large sales values in our sales process. So it doesn't take, but one or two good leads out of a sponsored webinar at $5,000 if we're selling, a $100,000 software implementation or something along those lines. So kind of my final thought before I open this up to questions and answers is, if you focus on one thing in 2021, if you don't have a healthy database of suspects and prospects in a CRM system, make that your first priority. So much of marketing, the inefficiency or wasted spending in marketing is because organizations don't take seriously the concept of controlling their own destiny by building an audience around their products and services that you can communicate with on a much less expensive basis via email and providing them with content and those types of things. And you're forced to either rent the audience or purchase the audience from search engines or industry publications. And reach out as often as possible. Going back to email prospecting, I think I passed over the point that in the sales world, we don't stop reaching out to a customer until they say no. And even if they say no, we make a value judgment of whether that's a no because they don't really understand why they should be buying from us and how it's going to help them, or is that a true no? We had them on the list and they don't really legitimately have use for our product or service. So that persistence and consistency of reaching out and leveraging every hot button and benefit that your product or service offers and finding 5 or 6 ways to say that. There's the old adage of it's the right person with the right message at the right time. So having that database of 10,000 people, just because we emailed them once presenting our product or services, doesn't mean we're done. we keep trying to reach them with a slightly different message, a slightly different pain point, anything to wake them up. So out of this webinar, please visit our website. We've got a variety of tools, including white papers, models, and suggestions for how to execute different types of campaigns. And if you think one of these tactics is a winner and your company should be executing it next year and you don't have the bandwidth internally to take it on, then email us. We're happy to have a conversation and see if there's a way we can help. So with that, I want to open it up to any questions. And I'm not sure, Izetta, if you're managing the chat box, if we have any questions, or if anybody wants to unmute themselves, feel free.
Hi, Mike. It's Warren from ChrisPac. Great presentation. Obviously,
thanks, Warren.
Kind of dangerous to say unmute yourself because it gives us a chance to talk. But one big question that I have, as we sat this time last year, nobody planned for a pandemic in their marketing. And one of the most effective tools that a lot of us have used are, of course, trade shows and networking events. And those have gone away, as you know. how do you foresee going forward in 2021 if we're still restricted? Um, I have not seen, and a lot of people I've talked to have not seen good results from some of the virtual trade shows and networking events that people have put together. What's your thought on virtual reaching out or how to be effective in virtual marketing in a trade show situation?
Yeah, interesting enough. So we concur with you. We're kind of in a wait and see on some of the virtual trade shows. We've had a few opportunities and evaluated a few opportunities, and like you had not necessarily seen the value there, especially because pricing really hasn't adjusted to the expectation. If they were running it on an in-person event, they're still trying to generate as much revenue from a virtual event, and it doesn't potentially make sense. I guess I would say one of the hidden benefits of the pandemic is we've actually noticed people's attendance of things like this, conducting your own webinar, right? And getting attendance at those online, to those online events has actually increased. People are open and researching more. We've also noticed in terms of cold calling that people tend to be a bit more available since we're not in office locked in meetings. So hopefully that helps, Warren. Any other questions?
Mike, there's one in the chat. Is LinkedIn worth investing in for affinity group marketing?
Oh, that's a tough one. It has not been for us as successful as Facebook. So the key is, and LinkedIn gives you their sales navigator and the ability to leverage them to accumulate, email addresses and do direct sales outreach is really strong. On the core kind of, hey, I want to profile as an advertiser a particular type of prospect and put my ad in front of them, that's been a bit weaker. Depending on the situation, if Facebook is, and we've got actually a webinar on Facebook specifically, it's undervalued for kind of that affinity group aspect. Anytime you're selling, even if you're selling B2B, if you're selling to somebody who's more of what I would put in the professional class where they don't necessarily turn off their mind, like if they're an engineer, they're an engineer to their heart and soul, right? They're still an engineer when they're browsing their kids' pictures on Facebook. And so being able to profile those and leverage that particular demographic via Facebook tends to be a stronger solution than LinkedIn.
Thank you.
Any other questions in the chat or otherwise?
We had another one come up in the chat that is, do you need to use Never Bounce to clean up emails?
You don't have to use a third-party tool necessarily. All of the marketing platforms, all of the email platforms are going to give you some level of bounce management. They're also going to give you protection with kind of the Canned Spam Act, with proper opt-outs and those types of things. So really, bounce management tends to be more of a process that you would put in place to determine, hey, do we want to put this in the hands of somebody to find the new email address for this person or the new person that replaces that position in a company. And that tends to be a very effective strategy that we use in our email communications. We manage those bounces. We monitor, the out-of-office responses, because an out-of-office response into a large organization, when somebody goes on vacation, they typically say, hey, here are the 2 other people that are covering my responsibilities. And so they're likely decision makers that we as sales and marketing people want to have in our database. Well, we're at 11:29. I appreciate everybody attending. And again, any questions that pop out of this, we'll send a follow-up email with the presentation. And please engage with us if we can be of help. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. This is very helpful.